day, everybody. I'm Professor Yomi Akinye of the Department of History and Strategic Studies, University of Lagos, and my area of specialization is Defense, Military and Strategic Studies, particularly French-speaking West Africa. Of recent, the French President Emmanuel Macron accused some West African states of being ungrateful to France, which has been helping them to maintain their sovereignty in the face of the challenges of insurgency, and that but for France, these countries today will not remain as sovereign states. Well, there is a popular Yoruba adage that when a son or a child tells the father that he does not know how to cook, the son wants to hear the story of how his mother lost her marriage. So now that the French president has accused these Francophone West African countries of ingratitude, is apt and proper to let the French community and the whole world to know that rather than being ungrateful, it's France that owes this West African country a debt of gratitude right from time immemorial, particularly from shortly after the First World War, when France was threatened and she was not sure of how to survive. These Francophone West African countries came very handy, and they were the ones that were able to stabilize France, to give France meaning and direction in the international community. So this recording is about the value of Francophone West African countries to France in the interwar years, that is between 1919 and 1939. 1919 when the First World War ended, and 1939 when the Second World War started. We are all familiar with the history of the First World War, and so I will not be going into details of this. It's therefore enough to know that after the war, France, like most other European states, were devastated. But France was particularly adversely affected, and she felt insecure in the face of likely German resurgence, which would threaten her. And so she started having to look all over the world for how to prepare herself, how to fortify herself in case of any other eventuality like the First World War. And to this end, the French government summoned its highest defense policy making body, the Conseil Supérieur de la Défense Nationale, which I will call CSDN henceforth, to look into the situation of France and see how to prepare France for survival in case of another war on the magnitude of the First World War. This committee had its inaugural meeting on the 28th of October 1923 and had several other meetings thereafter. At the end of this, the CSDN concluded that in the light of the experience of the First World War, the future wars are going to be not between military forces alone, but with the resources and all the institutions and apparatus that a country has. And so to be able to do that, it was necessary for France to get itself prepared in case of another eventuality. And to do this, France summoned all its national institutions, including the Ministry in charge of colonies, the Ministry in charge of national defense, and came with the conclusion that in time of peace, in order to prepare for any eventuality, every organ, every institution of France has to evaluate the contribution it will make towards national defense, and then how it will meet these eventualities. And so the French Ministry for Colonies was asked to evaluate the ability of the colonies to come to the assistance of France in case of another war on the magnitude of the First World War. The Ministry of Colony concluded that the experience of the First World War has shown that France lacked the necessary resources and wherewithal to be able to stabilize itself in the event of another war on the magnitude of the First World War. And to make up for the deficiencies of France, France concluded that our eyes are directed to our colonial empire, particularly our tropical colonies. And so several missions of inspection were held to evaluate and see the possibility, the potentiality of French colonies to come to our assistance. Colonies were grouped into two: principal colonies and secondary colonies. Because of their significance, West African, French-speaking West African countries were grouped into principal colonies for so many reasons, which we will itemize in this presentation. One of these was the richness of Francophone West African countries in primary raw materials, which were very strategic and important for the defense of France. Among these were agricultural materials, and several inspections were taken to evaluate the resources of Francophone West African countries to be able to assist the motherland in case of another crisis on the magnitude of the First World War. One of these was taken in 1937, and that one showed that of the total 281,905 tons of groundnut without shell from all of French colonies, French West African colonies alone accounted for 174,025 tons. That is of the total 281,905 tons from all of French colonies. 174,025 tons came from French West Africa alone. The sub-region also accounted for 5,300 tons of groundnut with pods out of the total of 5,534 tons from all of French colonies worldwide. And of course, all of the 2,710 tons of cotton grains and 15,914 tons out of the 16,745 tons of shea butter, and all of the 6,695 tons of shea butter from all of French colonies, and then 81,500 tons out of the 147,210 tons of palm kernel, and 20,000 out of the total of 38,000 tons of palm oil, 10,425 tons out of the 38,776 tons of coffee, 55,390 tons out of the 167,105 tons of banana, and 4,000 out of the 15,000 tons of cotton. Other items included 730 out of the 784 tons of sheepskin, 4,400 out of the 7,010 tons of Caesar, and all of the 6,500 tons of gum arabic. Also exported to France from French West Africa was 5,293 tons out of the 11,293 carats of diamond, and 4,000 out of the 4,834 kilograms of gold. The French also nursed the hope of getting manganese in high quality and gold from Cote d'Ivoire. The part allocated to West Africa in the safety of France in interwar years was not limited to the provision of foodstuff and industrial raw materials alone. West Africa occupied a key position in French overall strategy for the defense of their seaborne trade. The strategic location of Dakar, both in the geopolitics of the West African sub-region and international maritime trade, had long caught the attention of the French. Dakar constituted the only bridge between Gibraltar and Gabon and was the first terminus of trade from the Sudan to the Niger Valley. Dakar therefore occupied a central position for the French to control their vast African empire. The French also saw in Dakar the potentials of a commercial